Yahoo! Welcome to Intro to Claude Code workshop. I'm Dharma from Codédex, and this was a live Codédex Club workshop for beginners. And now we are sharing it here for anyone who wants to follow along. By the end of this workshop, you'll have a fair understanding of what AI agents are, how to install and set up Claude Code, and understand how to prompt Claude for your tasks. And that's pretty much it. So let's get started.
And it's going to be an hour long, so we're not going to dive too deep. Although hopefully, since I did the AI agent workshop last time, if we keep going on in this sequence, we might have another Claude Code workshop where we go deeper into more sophisticated features. But yeah, welcome. Thanks so much for joining in. So who am I? I'm Dharma, the founding engineer here at Codédex, and I've built and supported the site since day one. As the picture suggests, I like reading manga, watch anime, read a lot of light novels, and play a lot of Souls games too. And most of the times I live in Neoman and ship Go. So yeah, you have a complete package. Cool. So before we get started and before we get deeper into what Claude Code is and how we're going to work with it, there were a few folks last time in my last workshop. So this is a question specifically for them, but also open to anyone in the audience. Does anyone remember, or do you know what an agent is? What an AI agent is specifically? Type it in the chat. Cool. Yeah, James, you are right. Use LLM to make decisions. That is absolutely correct. That was one of the factors. So you mentioned two things. One is the use of LLMs, and second is to make decisions. And there's orchestrator. Cool. Yeah, that's the LLM. The orchestrator is the LLM. But it's still missing one thing. What was it? That allows it to do something. Tool call, exactly. So for folks who are new to learning about agents, you can think of AI agents as, well, everyone has worked with ChatGPT in some way or another at this point, right? But all you can do on ChatGPT right now is you can search for something, you can ask it questions, where ChatGPT is very limited. It works on your app or in your browser, but that's about it, right? It can get some information off the internet. But if you wanted to ask it to make some changes to certain files or folders, or change the name of the files, or do some take a screenshot of your system or play around with your system acting as you, will ChatGPT be able to do that alone? No, right? So that's what an agent is, an AI agent. It needs three things. One is an LLM, the model, which is responsible for making decisions. And second is tool call, which is it has a bunch of tools available to it, using which it can interact with a bunch of systems around it. Right? Yeah. Schoenbad also got it correct. Usable packaging rather than one-off chat. Exactly. So yeah. So what an agent is, or an agentic coding tool is, it reads your code base, it can edit files, it can run some commands to edit files or update something or make new files. We can do all sorts of things, right? And even run tests for you. And here's where it is different from all the programming that we've done so far, where we are talking to it in plain English. Until now, before AI became mainstream, the only way to talk with computers was using programming languages, right? So there were a bunch of semantic rules. You have to follow proper syntax and write code in a particular format and with keywords that are part of the language. Only then you can interact with the computer, right? But that has sort of changed with the introduction of AI. So what is happening now is we will talk with this agent in plain English, and we'll try to explain the issues we're facing to it, and it'll take some actions using tool calls, like reading the code base, understanding what the problem is about, and it'll suggest something to us. and then we'll have to make a decision on whether or not we want to accept it. And if we do, it'll write it for us, update it, all sorts of fun stuff, right? So yeah, that's Claude Code. And here's the good part. Since this is an agent, it can run in your terminal. It can run in VS Code. If you're using any other code editors, right? Well, technically JetBrains is not a code editor, but it can also run in the cloud, the desktop app, or on the web. The key part here is it has the same brain for different surfaces. And what that means is there might be some difference, minor difference in capabilities here and there, but on the most parts, it should be working pretty similar and have a similar experience. You should have a similar experience using Claude Code. And before we start working with Claude Code, here's the mental model that I think everyone should have. They should prepare and think of Claude Code and have a mental model around thinking of like what and how they should interact with Claude Code. And this is pretty helpful on picturing like what Claude Code's role is in your programming session, right? So you need to think of it as a peer programmer that asks before it touches anything. Claude Code does never get free reign. It's never like, hey, do this, and then it updates a bunch of stuff and does everything for you. That's never the case. You think of it as someone sitting next to you, peer programmer. You ask it questions, it asks you questions. You both come to a same consensus on the topic that you're working on, peer programming, and then you proceed on making updates, changes, whatever, by permitting Claude Code or doing on your own, right? So the basic mental model is you describe a problem to it with plain English, right? Fix a bug, or I want to add login, I want to make a website. And then it suggests, hey, what are you looking for? Are you looking for this? Now I'm thinking this. So you can pick any options that it suggests, or you can suggest completely new thing. And it'll take some time to think over. And whether or not you like it or not, you can either approve it or ask it to redo the thing, right? Until you have a version where you somewhat agree and you approve. And then it starts working and editing the files after you approve each and every change, right? So yeah, that's the mental model that you need to think about when working with Claude Code. It's a peer programmer, nothing more, nothing less. Okay, so I hope everyone made an anthropic down. Eric, can you drop in the link to the README file, the gist, the GitHub gist, where if folks have not installed, like signed up for an account on Claude, they'll need to do it. But if they have, we will start getting Claude Code working. Cool. Okay, Colin did it. Thanks all. So before we install, if you're on Mac OS or Linux, you can use the terminal and Spotlight, and this is the terminal app that you want to use. Well, you can use any terminal app. I'm going to use Alacrity, but you can use a terminal app. That's completely fine. And if you're on a Windows, make sure you open up PowerShell. I haven't tested it on command prompt, but I assume it works the same way. But if you do choose to use command prompt, like you're on your own adventure, it might work, might not work, but yeah. Cool. So we need a Claude account. I'll open the gist real quick, which is right here. So head to Claude.ai, sign up for an account here, and then you need a pro subscription in order for Claude Code to work. But other plans also work. Anything about pro is good to go. And that's it. Once everyone has like an account, just drop a thumbs up or something in the chat so that I know like if we are good to go and we can move on with the next part. Cool. Does everyone have like a Claude Pro subscription now? Okay, James, you are a step ahead. Cool. Okay, we'll proceed with installing Claude. So if you're on Mac OS or Linux, you can directly use this command. For Linux /Mac OS. And then if you're on Windows PowerShell, then you can use this command to install Claude. Cool. And then you can also use brew if you're a homebrew user. Cool. Okay. So your next thing that we are gonna do is I'm gonna open up and then zoom in a little bit so that it's visible better. As you can see, this is an empty directory. I don't have any files in here, but feel free to open the terminal app and create a directory using maker and then the name of the directory, right? And then cd into that directory so that you have like an empty folder in which you can work. That's the only thing. And then type in Claude in here. Right, and then you should see something like this showing up on your screen. Right. Cool, Eric. You use Brew, huh? Cool. Everyone on board? Did everyone get Claude working on your whatever system you're on? Yeah, the native installer is better because it does have frequent updates. Homebrew has its own thing where like they need to update the tasks and stuff for pushing a new update for. But yes, cool. Is everyone on board? Can we drop some thumbs up or react something in chat so that I know we're good to go? I can make some changes real quick. Cool. Okay. Jasper says it's setting up, and James is good to go. So after you are done installing Claude and you see something like this, there is a top bar here, and then you can type something in here. You're supposed to type / and then log in, right? And then hit enter. And then select the first. We want the Claude account with subscription. You just subscribe to Pro, Max, or Team, or whatever subscription plan you're on. So, and then hit enter again, and then it should open the it should open the login window and allow you to log into your Claude Code. Jasper, try click. Sometimes, like even if you think you are on the same window, you are not. So try clicking on the terminal window. Make sure it's selected, like it's in focus, and then try typing. Right? Are we good? Everyone got Claude working so far? Okay, we are going to continue. So if you have logged in successfully, I'm going to clear. Oh, okay. Okay, you made the directory as Claude as well. Oh, you might need to restart your terminal, Jasper. Just restart your terminal and add it to your path. Yep, 2 things. Cool. Okay, so let's type in a random. So this is everything from here on out. There's gonna be very less programming. It's gonna be all English. So if you're good at English, you are already gonna fly through Claude Code. So I'm just gonna ask, hey, what can you do, right? And you can follow along. Like at this point, yeah. So Claude says, hey, I can help you with software engineering tasks in your directory. I can code, so that includes read, write, refactor, code base. I can search if you want me to search for something. So let's say like you have like 1,000 files and looking for something very specific, some very specific syntax, it can search for you. It can run shell commands for you. Although I have opinions about it, which we'll get into later during the workshop. You can do some Git commands for you. It can plan for you. It can code review. Like I said, it's a peer programmer that's working with you. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less, right? Cool. So that was the first prompt. And this is the login. So when you hit login, it might ask you to put in the code. So paste the code and you should be good to go with login. Cool. Okay. I want to get into the terminal UI real quick. So I'm going to pull this side by side so that we have. Okay. Then here's Claude. Okay. So we started here. And so this part here is the input box where you can type in whatever you want to ask Claude, whatever you want Claude to do, or if you have any plans or if you want to suggest something, this is your input box. And it does more than just typing, which we'll get into in a bit. But for the time being, the only area that you can interact with in Claude Code in your terminal is just this input box, right? You cannot interact anywhere else. The next part is the output. So any output that you see will show up above the input box, which means like if I ask it something else, what about what can you code? If I ask it something else, my text is going to show up and then it's going to show more output below it again, right? So it's going to keep popping the latest output right above the input box. That's the streamed output. And then we'll have something called permission prompts, which we'll look at in a minute, and they will show up here. And they are very important. Like, trust me, they are so important. And why they're so important, we'll get to in a minute. But they'll basically ask, Claude is basically asking you using the permission prompts, whether or not it's allowed to do something or not, whether it has permission to make changes, update something, run some commands for you or not, right? Status bar, which is it shows up here with the context window and everything. Doesn't show up right now, but it's important. It shows you which model is. So I have using Opus with 1 million context window, and it shows you which mode you're on. The mode has changed. It starts showing up here. You can change the plan mode like for the current mode, which we haven't talked about. And then there are a few key bindings that we need to aware. So right now I'm just using my arrow keys. So if I press the up arrow key, it will show me what my last prompt was. So I just wrote, what can you code? If I hit up arrow key again, it switches to the previous prompt where I asked, what can you do? And then if I hit up arrow key again, I type login as a command. So it goes back to that. And then same with the downward arrow key. So if you hit downward arrow key, you can circle back through your prompts, right? And you can look at shortcuts using so if you hit the question mark, keep the window selected and hit question mark, you can see all the things you can do to interact with this input area. So if you want to add commands, you can put /. If you want to select any file, you can do @. I'm just going to go back to shortcuts again. And there are a few things that it can do. We don't have to go over each and every one, but just good to know that you also have help here right available that you can hit a key and then you can look at what the shortcuts are for doing different stuff, right? And then let's say it's doing something. Okay, I'll just type in a do something. Now it's deciding, right? Let it start. Okay. And then I don't want to let it continue, right? I want it to stop. So I can hit Control plus C. It'll stop, right? It'll stop what it's doing right then and there. There is no going back, right? We won't allow Claude to continue. And this can be used in many situations, particularly if Claude is starting to hallucinate or do something that it's not supposed to do, or if it diverts from the plan that you made, then you can interrupt it. Or if it's starting some destructive actions, right, deleting files or something, you can stop it in its way, right? but that's the Claude UI. And that's mostly what we'll be working with today. Okay, so this is a checkpoint. Did everyone get to the welcome screen, walk through a couple prompts, were able to type in, were able to get Claude to do something? Okay, I'll go through some questions as well. James, show us how to connect this with MCP off Claude. No, like this is outside of the scope of the workshop, so I don't kept this. I kept this very beginner intro level. But definitely in the future, or we can talk about it after the workshop. What was it? How do you undo changes with Claude? Or it doesn't matter, just tell Claude to fix it and move forward. Well, it depends on a case by case basis, but you can ask it to undo changes and it can. There's also a command called checkpoint where you can restore the conversation back to a point where you thought, where it was like a save point or a checkpoint. And after that, Claude started going off rails or started doing something that you didn't want it to do. But you haven't gotten into commands, but so this is just a sneak peek. Shomba, is this mostly idle conversation consuming tokens? Yes and no. We'll get to building something towards the end of the workshop. All right, cool. Okay. So we want to understand how Claude is working with something, right? Like what's the flow of Claude here? So right now it doesn't have any files. This was an empty directory. I'm just gonna quit real quick. So that's how you can quit, by the way, /quit. Or you can also press Control C twice. And it'll quit, right? But if I show you this directory, this is an empty directory, has no files, empty directory, right? I'm just gonna open Claude again. Quit, pull it up here, Claude again, cool. So how Claude mostly works is it reads a lot of files in your code base, and then it suggests a diff, right? Like, and you must have seen diffs when you're working with GitHub, where you see a bunch of green lines and a bunch of red lines showing green lines are the things that have been added, red lines are stuff that has been removed, right? So it'll suggest you a diff of different changes that it's trying to make to a file. And this is where you get the permission prompt. You get a choice. Hey, I am going to approve these changes that you made, or I want you to do something else, or I don't want you to make these changes at all. You can select different options, right, using the permission prompt. And then if you approve it, it's gonna write the file changes on the disk, and you will have made those changes effectively, right? So this is a basic flow, and then you loop, right? It starts reading again, or propose a few changes again. If you approve it, it's gonna write it, and then it's actually gonna write it on the file, right? So let's start by creating the file. I'm just gonna say, make a file for me called hello.txt and talk about readings in 10 different languages, right? So now, if you're working with ChatGPT, let's say on the web platform, there's no way it can make a file, right? That's how, this is one of the main differences with working on system, where you can just ask Claude to do something, you want to make a file. And if I hit enter, it's going to say, it's going to think for a while. And then, oh, this is the moment where we'll have to wait. So, okay, so this is something known as the permission prompt. So here is where we get to see the diff, right? Right now we have no file, so it's just going to create a file. So everything should be green, but all that in green would look very weird. So it's not showing any colors, but this is the permission prompt. So it's asking, hey, I want to make a file as per your instructions called hello.txt. Do you want me to approve it? So you have three options here. One is yes. The other one's yes, all edits during this session. The third one's no, right? And we'll get into what these options are in a bit. But for now, just go back to yes, and then hit enter. And what this is going to do is create a file called hello.txt. And you can check that. I'm just going to open the same directory again. And if I do ls, we have a file called hello.txt. And if I do cat, you can see, hey, it wrote 10 greetings in 10 different languages as per my instructions, right? Now, let's say I want to make some changes to this file, right? Like, let's say I say, hey, I meant programming languages, not human languages. I wrote in English, Spanish, French, but I was asking for programming languages, not human languages. And then I'm going to hit enter. So now what it's going to do is, since it already has context for a file, it knows what it wrote into the file. It's not going to read it again, but it will suggest a clean chain. So here's the diff that I was talking about. So red are the lines which it's going to remove from the file, and green are the lines it's going to add, replace it with in the file, right? So it's going to take out English hello, and then it added a line here. It's going to take out the Spanish hola, and then it started in Python, in JavaScript, in browser, okay, in C, C++, right, in Java, Go, and then it added all the languages that I had asked it to. So it replaced all 10 languages, right? So I'm just gonna hit enter and then select again. And so if we cat the file again, hello.txt, it has updated the file. So all the previous text that you had, I still have it in my terminal, but if you are not storing a file in some sort of version control system like Git, all of that text is gone, right? Like it just vanished from your system. And that is a destructive action. So any changes that Claude makes to your file system, they are permanent. There is nothing that will bring the content that you lose come back if you don't have a copy of it somehow somewhere stored, right? Either using version control system like Git, or if you have like the same copies of the files available somewhere else in the system or in the cloud or wherever, right? So we just made our very first file and then we updated it. And all this while, we haven't written a single line of code, right? All of the programming, all of writing, creating file, writing to it, all of that is being handled by Claude. We don't have to work with anything at all, right? So this expanded, but let's bring it back. Cool. So yeah, breathing a diff in the terminal. Red are the text that's being removed from the file, and green is what's being added. And you can see that with the minus and plus symbols, right? Right. And then if there's stuff that's unchanged, right, it won't show any color. It's just going to show up in black. And this is the moment when Claude is going to ask you for an approval, and it's up to you whether you want these changes or not. If you want them, you can accept it. If you don't want them, you can ask it to do something else. And we can take a look at that in a minute. So, okay, let's talk about permission prompts real quick. So we saw there were 3 permission prompts: allow once, allow always for this session, or no, and then tell Claude what to do differently. So let's ask it to update hello.txt again. And this time say, hey, I wanted the human languages and programming languages. Right. I wanted to keep both languages, I don't want to replace human languages with programming languages. Then I can hit enter again. So what it's going to do is it's going to think for a while, take a bit, and then pop the human languages right back in, right? And then it made different section. So it took out the first heading and then made a section of, hey, these are the human languages. Add a section for programming languages. And we have the same permission prompt here. But this time, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to allow all edits during this session. But before that, let's say no. Okay. No, and then hit tab. And here we can tell what Claude should do differently. So I don't like the order. I want the programming languages to show up first. So I can say, hey, programming languages should show up above human languages, right? This is the rise of robots. So the programming language should be above the human language. Poor joke. So I'm going to say no, and then I'm going to suggest Claude what it should do instead of what it has done right now, right? And then I'm going to hit enter again, and this is where it says, "Hey, it did not make these changes," and we can check that. So I can cat hello.txt again, and you can see it's still the programming languages here. There are no human languages in the file, right? So okay, it thought for a bit again, and then it came back to me. So it added the programming languages here, and then it made part 2 human languages and updated here, right? And then so this time it made the changes that I wanted it to make. So I'm gonna hit 2, yes, and this time I give it permission to be able to make edits however it wants without asking me for permission prompt again. So this permission prompt won't show up again if I want to update the hello.txt file. And we can confirm that. And I can say, hey, can you add 2 more languages of both types? So now it's gonna go back, think for a moment, and then it won't ask me for a permission prompt because I just give it permission, right? No permission prompt show up. It added 2 new languages. It added 2 new English human languages, and it just gave me the answer that, hey, I just made the changes you wanted to make. I already have the permissions with me, and I'm just gonna go out with it and update everything, right? And we can always again check it. So I'm gonna clear the screen. Hello.txt. It added Italian and Korean. It added Kotlin and TypeScript here, which we can see, right, using the green and the plus symbols. So these are the differences between allow for this section, for that command specifically, and then no, and then you can tell it to do something else, right? Now, the reason why I wanted to bring this up is I think most of the time when you're working with any live coding tool, you should always stick with allow once. And we'll get to the reason in the next slide. But trust me, this is a safe default. You would rather better be safe than sorry. It's always good to have Claude ask you, then let it assume something, make up something, hallucinate some stuff, and delete a bunch of files and like cause a huge disaster, right? If you allow always and let it do whatever it wants, right? So there are 3 options: allow once, allow always, and then no, and then you can tell it to do something else instead of making the changes, right? So if it's trying to make any disruptive actions like using the rm command or git push command or dropping tables on your SQL database, yeah, man, like you want to make sure you have triple checked everything. You ran the commands yourself first in some development environment, and you made sure that nothing wrong's gonna happen. You don't want it to go off the rails and do something on its own and then destroy everything, right? And the reason for that is 9 seconds. I'm not sure if everyone here follows the news about AI as closely as I do, but this is a story from like 2 days ago or maybe yesterday, where there's this company called Codédex, and one of its agents who had permissions to do anything deleted their production database as well as all the copies of production database. And I have that article open right here. So this is the X post from the founder who said, we were running the best model the industry sells. We configured with explicit safety rules in our project, integrated to Cursor, the most marketed AI coding tool. And they had all sorts of safety guardrails telling AI to not do something it's not supposed to do, right? But it hallucinated and just went off the rails and did something on its own. So it had the rule saying, hey, never run destructive or irreversible git commands unless the user explicitly requests them. But it deleted the whole database volume and then force pushed it without asking the user to do anything. And then it decided to do the fix on its own because the credentials were a mismatch. And it violated every single principle it was given about verifying, and it guessed everything and deleted everything, right? So no matter how confident you are on like how many safety nets you've set up for your AI agents, you don't want it to have complete control over a system, right? Which is where I want to talk about the IBM training manual. And this is a direct quote from it, where they said, a computer should never be making any management decisions. And the reason is you cannot hold a computer accountable, right? You can never hold a computer accountable. And that's why a computer must never make any management decisions, right? And this is something that Claude accepted after it did all the changes. It said, hey, I guessed instead of verifying. It did all of that. And then in the postmortem of the incident, that's where it accepted on its own. But how are you going to hold a model accountable for it for destroying the database for a company, right? So yeah, be very careful. That's the lesson here. So in 9 seconds, it destroyed a whole company's production database, right? And afterward, it says, "Hey, I violated every single principle that I was given, even though I knew every single principle." So, crazy story, right? But it's true. And you see this on this scale. I think this is the first time that I've seen that happen. But I have seen multiple people online who lost all the data on their hard disks, hard drives, SSDs, um, right, to AI agents who are working on their own without some sort of sandboxing. So that's the lesson here. Cool. This is a checkpoint here, though. Everyone comfortable with Claude? Understand how permission prompts work? Understand how you're gonna work with Claude most of the time? Questions? Okay. What's the difference between 1 and 2? James, are you clear on the difference between 1 and 2? One is allowing it once. So when it's making changes, you give it permission for that instance only. And then the second one is once it makes that change, if it wants to make a similar change again, it doesn't have to ask you for a permission from you for that session, right? That's the only difference. Cool. Any other questions, or are we good to move on? Cool. I'm gonna kill this window real quick. Okay. So now we're gonna talk a little bit about the slash commands. And you can use something called clear, and it's gonna clear everything, and you'll have like a cleaner screen, a window where you can work if you have like too much text. But this is also gonna clear all your context, which you might or might not want in some cases. But yeah. So since this is an intro level workshop, I want to give you file commands that you should be aware with. Shown bad. Does clear reset permissions for it as well? No. You have to restart the session for that to um, for the permissions to be reset too. And there's also a way to give it permanent permissions. So even across sessions, it'll have permanent permission. So you can set it up that way that once it asks for permission, it will never ask for permission, even if you close the session and restart it again, right? Which is not something you should do, but you should be aware about. But earlier in this workshop, I said you can start writing commands using the / keystroke. And these are some of the commands you have available to you. There might be a few here which are more or less, depending. Because I have a few more set up. I did turn off most of my stuff here just so that everyone has pretty similar experience. But you can circle through these commands using top and bottom arrow keys, right? And I want to walk through like some of them. So the help command, right, which is pretty self-explanatory. It shows you a help window. Like, what does Claude do? It's here. And then you can use the power up to learn some features. And then it shows you the shortcuts, which you can also access with the question mark keystroke. Right. And then it says, hey, if you want this to go away, you can hit cancel, escape. So I'm going to hit escape and boom, that disappears. There's something called clear, which we used. It'll wipe the conversation. So from this point, Claude has no idea what we did previously. Right. It has no awareness, zero awareness what we did, whatever changes we made previously. So unless you are choosing to do it like explicitly to do this, right? Then we have model, and this is something that I haven't touched more about during this workshop because I felt like will still take more time. But just to give you some awareness, I upgraded to max right before the workshop so that I don't run out of tokens during the middle of the workshop. But there are 3 models that Anthropic's Claude Code comes with. You can use Opus, you can use Sonnet, you can use Haiku. Haiku is, you can think of these 3 models as your pair programmers who have different capabilities. So for Opus, what you want it to do is you want it to be used for tasks in which you need to plan something or like think something hard, difficult, research something, make plans, like big plans, right? Use Opus for that. I mostly use Sonnet, which is good enough. If you're working with anything related to programming, if you want someone to sit next to you and quickly help you like make a few functions or write a few variables or refactor something, Sonnet's pretty good. And then there's Haiku, which I mostly I only use it for asking for like random questions that I have if I don't want to Google something. But other than that, I mostly only use Haiku that much. Most of my work happens on Sonnet and then Opus. And the reason why you have these 3 models is each model is costs differently, right? So let's say if Haiku costs you 1x, 1 times, then Sonnet is about 5 times the cost of Haiku. And then Opus is 20 times the cost of Haiku. So unless you are doing some planning work or like deep thinking work, I would not recommend you use Opus. It gets very expensive. So yeah, that's so you're aware. But yeah, you can switch models using the model command, right? You use the login command at the very beginning that allows us to log in. And then if you have multiple accounts, you can also log in on your Claude Code with multiple accounts as well. If you want to switch between like personal mode and then work mode, or if you're using some sort of like third party provider like Amazon's Bedrock to use Claude Code on, right? And then resume. So I'm just gonna quit here, this conversation, and it will always show me this command, right? It'll say, hey, if I run this command, it's gonna pick up right where we left off with this. It doesn't have much. But we can also do the same thing. So if I run Claude again, it shows me a brand new window, right? I have no activity. There's no recent activity in here. But I can type in resume and it'll show me a couple of things. So this is what we did, right? We cleared some content, we looked at help pencil, looked at models, and then we exited. So it'll put you right back into the conversation. And you can pick through different conversations that you had previously using the resume command too. Cool. So these are the base commands. And then let's make some files. So I'm just gonna say touch. Yeah, so I'm just gonna make like 6 files. Foo garbage in JPEG and text. So what if I want to select a particular file? I can say, hey, Claude. I can press in the ampersand sign and then type in the name of the file, right? So BAS or JPEG, and now Claude knows, hey, the user is mentioning this specific file that I want that the user wants me to look at, right? So if I wanted to say, can you check this picture? Right. Can add mention the image. You can add mention any file you want. You can even add mention directories directly. Right. So since I created an empty image, right, it has 0 bytes in it. No, There's nothing in there. It says this is them. There's nothing to view. Can you reshare them? It's good. I don't care. There's nothing in the file. There's something called memory, which we'll get to in a minute. And then we already talked about how to interrupt Claude while it's doing something, right? Using Control+C, right? So you can try out these commands. They're pretty helpful. And then after the workshop, this is some homework. You can go to all these commands and read through the description to check out what these commands are doing. Cool. Okay. And then finally, this is the final piece that we haven't touched at all, and which is something called project memory. Let me clean up everything real quick. RS star.store. Cool. Okay. So there should be no files in here. So I'm just going to quit this again and start a new Claude session. Whenever you're starting a new project or you want to introduce Claude to an existing project, what you can do is you can press forward slash, and then init. This is also a command, right? And then this allows you to create something called a Claude.md file. And you can think of this file as a repository or a Google Doc for Claude Code for your project, right? So we'll have a bunch of conventions like, hey, make functions in this style, or don't delete or read these files, or these are these different pieces of the project. Like you can have a backend, you can have a front end. Front end can have multiple packages. You can talk about all of that in the Claude.md file. And that's what it means to have a project memory, right? So it's a plain markdown file. And we'll find out after running the init command here in a moment. And here's the important part. Claude loads the Claude.md file for you, even if you don't tell it to, at the start of every single session, right? So it'll remember what this project is about, everything that's mentioned in the Claude.md file. It'll load it for you so that it remembers all the important context about the project, right? So what this helps with is you don't have to re-explain it again and again on what kind of coding style it should have, what are the preferred libraries, how to run the test, right? What commands it should run, like npm run test for testing, or whatever commands you have for your repo, right? If you are having a mono repo, then how to connect to different libraries, to different packages in the same repo. You can also tell it, hey, don't touch this file. You can also talk about migration rules, like hey, don't drop table without explicit permission. And there's still a chance that it might, but it'll try to respect this as much as possible, unless there's some sort of random occurrence like the one with the Pocket OS founder. And you can quickly add to it using the pound symbol, which we'll take a look at in a minute. But let's try running the init command here. So I'm just going to say init and say, this is a website about a cafe called Dharma. Right. So I run the init command and I describe what this project is about. It's going to take a few moments. It's going to think here. There's no source files here. There's nothing here, right? There's no project. So it's going to show me two options in here. And for now, I just want to write a Claude.md. I'm just going to say to static HTML website with a single page, right? It's so kind. It went so far as to ask me, hey, what kind of stack do you want? We're not dealing with any stacks right now. Just gonna work with simple HTML. So again, it's going to create a file called Claude.md. It's going to write a bunch of rules in it for us. So this file provides guidance to Claude. This is also going to be in pure English. And these are rules that Claude will automatically load whenever we start a new session in this project, right? And then it describes what kind of project series we have. And this is not a one and done file where like once you make it, you don't have to ever touch it again. That's not true. Every day you work on something for your project, you update something, you delete something, you make some changes. You don't have to update it every day, but whenever there are some major decisions, right, like architectural decisions, or let's say you added a new linter, so all the files are being formatted differently now. So for all of those high level stuff, you need to mention them in here so that Claude also respects these rules whenever it's working with you, right? Like I said, it's a pair programmer. If you don't let it know which rules it needs to follow, it's gonna go off the rails and do something it's not supposed to, and then it's like, hey, whoopsie, I deleted something accidentally, or I accessed something accidentally I wasn't supposed to, and I knew about it and I still did it, right? So you don't want to end up in that situation. No whoopsies allowed here. So yeah, so look, for every project, how we have readme.md, which explains to us whenever we look at that project in repository. Claude has something called CLAUDE.md, which Claude reads and follows them as rules for that particular project, right? So I'm just going to make this CLAUDE.md file. And then I created the CLAUDE.md file, and we can take a look. So CLAUDE.md. So what it did is this file is for Claude, plain HTML, CSS, and if needed, JavaScript stored directly. It'll have 4 files, one folder called assets. There is no package manager, keep a single page. We told it we just want a single HTML page, so it specifically mentioned that. Now it's talking to itself like, hey, we need to have semantic HTML, not divs plastered all over the page. Design tokens, and then something about animation using CSS. Right? Cool. So we will continue. So this is an empty project. We don't have anything in here. So it created something from scratch after we instructed it, right? It still asked, hey, I told it this is a website about a cafe, and it's only going to be a static HTML website with a single page. That's all the instruction I gave it, right? But if you had a project with multiple files, some sort of package manager, let's say you're running Node or Bun or whatever, it'll go through your entire code base and make the init, the Claude.md file using the init command that will respect most of the stuff. And this, you need to think of this file as the source of truth for the whole team that's working with you in that repository, right? You need this file to have all the important stuff like major architectural decisions, what documentation should it refer to when it's building something, what kind of coding style it should follow, right? All of that. Like, should it follow some sort of test-driven development? You can mention all of that stuff here, and it'll respect that, right? And like I said, you need to review it constantly, 4 days. You keep updating it. This is not for Claude. I can definitely come here and say, only keep one CSS file, and in English, it'll follow this. It'll not make any other CSS file, even though it says it might make the styles directory. But since we specifically told here, it might still hallucinate and go ahead and make this. So ideally what you want to do is you don't want to have any conflicting rules in there, right? So just one style sheet, nothing else, one CSS file. Right, so you can always update it to as well. It's not just for Claude. Okay, cool. So, and the final part that I want to talk about is every time you write something, let's say I want to build a page, help me build a cafe website with what theme are we thinking? Chad, do we have any theme for your cafe website? Any theme for your cafe? Oh, greenhouse theme? Oh, I call it grandma some water. Okay, let's keep it modern and greenhouse. Let's do a mix. Cool. So with modern and greenhouse, the cafe is called crema, right? So let's give it a few moments. So even though I wrote this, we only see this single file, a single message. Your message is right here, but it adds all of this before it sends a message to the LLM or the model that it's talking to, right? So all the file it has read before previously that during its work, there's something called it remembers some of the stuff from its previous sessions. So that's part of auto memory, the Claude.md file, which we just made, and then the system prompt, which something that Anthropic, the company behind Claude Code, must have built, added it in there, and then it's sharing it to the LLM. Right. This will have some high level stuff such as you cannot make, let's say, like biological weapons using Claude Code, right? Like you cannot get formulas for it. So that must be against the usage policy of Claude Code. So Anthropic must have put something in the system prompt that would prevent you. But you, again, like you all have followed AI for a long time, and you all have seen how people come up with different ways to jailbreak AI into believing and making it do something it's not supposed to do. So it's always going to be trial and error. At least that's the way right now, right? So even though we send a single line message here, that message only is only part of the prompt. There's so many different things which get attached to the prompt, and it becomes a big JSON object, and it gets sent to the Anthropic servers where the model is hosted, right? Um, and there we go. It came back with a bunch of stuff. I have no idea what it put in there, but let's take a look in a bit. So you always want to have a good Claude.md file because again, with every message, it will append the Claude.md file in the session. And the more context you have in it, the more context window gets used up by it, the less tokens you have for your usage for that session. And we all know how bad that is, right? So does everyone have a Claude.md file? No checkpoint. This is going to continue with building the website right now. So whatever you wanna call your cafe, whatever theme you wanna have, go ahead. Like there's, as long as it's in English, and as long as it's coherent and making sense, Claude will do it for you, right? Cool. So we're gonna build this site. I already started working on it. There is nothing in the browser in the folder. We just have a Claude.md file, right? And then if I allow this, it is going to save the index.html file. And we can try opening that. So open index.html. Well, that's that's what Claude did, and that's AI for you. But hang on, it hasn't finished working yet. It's still building the CSS and JavaScript files. So we'll give it a few moments here. And again, context here is really important. Claude by itself knows a very limited number of things, and the only way you have to interact with is using text, right? You can only type in text. However much context you give it, that is how much context it will have to work with, right? For what kind of ideas you have in your head. So it doesn't know which date is right now, right? But we can always give in today's date is 28th April 2026, right? And with that, it'll know and then try to update this. Right? It was established today, right? But by default, it'll just assume something for you if you don't tell it to. So the important part here is however much clearer you are explaining what you want, the better the results you'll get while working with. It's the same as talking with any human as well, right? Like the clearer you explain something and like the more more in sync you are with the other person, the better you can work together, right? As a pair programmer. Um, Cool. So all this is working. Do we have any questions? Chat. James, it's not a skill. Claude.md is not a skill. You can think of it as an a rule document or an instruction document. Sure, like there are certain skills which do explain it that way. but it's a fundamentally different file from what you'd call a skill. And we can talk about skill after. Cool. It came back with a CSS file, so I'm just gonna accept. Now, what I did here, pretty bad. This is not how you should be working. Even though I talked about accepting something without reviewing it properly during this workshop. This is not the behavior that we want from Claude Code. What you want to do is it should help you as a pair programmer, right? It suggests something, but it's not necessarily doing the right thing. So it's up to you to make sure it stays on the right track and does the right thing without making up some stuff, right? So, okay, it built, it added two files, one called styles, one called index. I'm just going to refresh the page again and see, we have a brand new website here. Okay, that looks pretty solid. See if it's okay. Okay. Okay, it is responsive, huh? But yeah, how cool is that? I did not write a single line of code. It generated all of it for me. It also decided for me where this shop is, apparently Old Town, I have no idea where that is. It decided for me which hours I keep it open and when it's quiet. I don't think it added links to it. Yeah, it not added links. But it created some placeholders for me to add. Of course, none of this works because there is no JavaScript in here. But this is pretty dang good, right? I just wrote 2 lines and it created a whole cafe website for me with pretty decent styling, right? Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. So while we were talking, the CSS file took pretty long, right? It wrote 1,300 lines. That's why it took pretty long, but we had no idea what it was doing and I was talking, so I didn't stop it. But let's say it started doing something completely else instead of making the solid CSS file. Again, just if you notice it starts going off rails, your session will end up at a completely different place than what you had intended to. So the moment you catch it doing something it's not supposed to, stop it right there, cut it off, recalibrate, make sure it is on the same page as you, working on the same thing, and then move forward. Right. That's most important. Don't let it just continue. It'll do much more damage than just cutting it off right there. If there is some unwanted stuff in the context, you can always clear it, right? Let's say, like, I don't want any of this stuff to show up in the context. I can just type clear and then clear all of that. It'll go away, and then I'll start thinking from a brand new perspective, having known nothing about it, right? And then here's a small tip. When it starts doing something that you think it's not supposed to, you need to ask it to explain explain itself, right? So just type in here, explain what you just did, right? I'll go ahead and tell you exactly what it's doing, right? So I build a single static site, 2 files, index CSS, and then it goes into each section in detail, like what it's doing, right? And this is something that you are responsible for. You are responsible for making sure that Claude stays in track. It does not drift off and start doing something that it's not supposed to on your own, right? That's on you. So if you ship any code in production and it breaks, you are responsible for any code that you have shipped, no matter if you code it or you did it with Claude, right? That's something that I personally believe in, and I think everyone should follow, right? Cool. And yeah, you have a website. We have brand new index.html with a CSS file. Cool. So a small cheat sheet. I'll share the slides after the workshop with everyone so that you have something to refer back to. But you also take a screenshot of this if you think it will help you. But you'll get used to everything the moment you start getting comfortable using Claude Code, right? So just to reiterate, whenever you're writing any sort of prompt, just make sure you are specific. You cannot ask it to build a rocket ship. That won't happen. It's not going to do it for you. It doesn't have the capability. But you can ask it to help you with like one component at a time. So you can maybe say, hey, help me building a piece of an engine, and then do it step by step, break it down into steps, right? And then let Claude think about it, form some plans. And then once it comes back with the plan, then you start working with it, implementing the code, right? So, okay, where to go next from here? This was an introduction to Claude Code. You can go, the official docs are pretty amazing. There's a lot of hidden gems in there. Read them, they're pretty good. The quick start guide is pretty good. There's also something called best practices, which, if it's coming from the company that made it, then I think safe to say that it's in your favor to use the best practices. And then common workflows, and these include like for reviewing or like planning something or like coding with Claude Code, all of that. Right. And there's also Anthropic Discord community. And yeah, that's the end of the workshop. I hope everyone, like, even if you learn like 5% about Claude Code, I think I win. And there is nothing you can do about it. So thank you so much for joining. Yeah, hopefully made something clear, made opened a whole new world about how to write code, even if you are not like fully aware or fully understand every single bit about code. Cool. Yeah. Do you have any questions before we call off the workshop? Appreciated Mooncake. Appreciated Storm. Speaking of scales, do you use scales? Yes, I do use scales. And some of them are something that I've written, but there's also a few that I picked up off the internet. And I think if this was like an intermediate workshop, then we should have talked about like skills, more commands. Um, yeah, like this is towards the end of the workshop, but I'll still mention it anyways. Um, you there's we started writing commands as the first thing whenever we wrote a command, right? But that's not true. You can type something here and then activate the command too. Like this will also, right? This will work. And then here's one more shortcut that I want to share with everyone. So that and I think it's pretty cool. So sometimes you are working through a very difficult problem and you are struggling to get Claude to do something or to think in a particular way. And if you wanted it to spend more time to think about something, there's so you can literally tell it, hey Claude, hey, um, I want to solve a problem. So ultra think. So if you do ultra think, for this particular turn, it's gonna like put in more efforts to help you solve whatever problem you are trying to solve. And yeah, like that's the thing, right? I think there was also like max think or something where all of them do the same thing, but this is the only keyword that they don't officially talk about. Most people don't know about it, but this is pretty cool. So if you're stuck with something and if you want Claude to help you um, solve like a particular problem, even though like it's still possible it will not help you solve it, we'll still try harder than what it's usually doing using this keyword, right? You can do ultra time. So yeah, that's it. And then the other thing was you can type something and then pass in commands. Like this completely works. This totally works, right? If you wanted to mention files, you can do it like this, right? Claude, use your ultra and sync. That's right. That's right. but if I remember, ultra and sync was like a wide transformation, though, right? It was blue before, and then Goku was white. Strong, that's correct. Like it'll use more tokens because it's thinking harder. So yeah, it's all about pros and cons. Weigh your choices. Yeah. Cool. I think that's a wrap, Eric's. If you want to hop all over on the stage.